Widespread rain in the Midwest, 85% chance Saturday in Badgerland, Madison, and rain for South Bend, which sounds like a recipe to run the football with Audric Estime.
Yeah, and so USC fans might go, "Uh-oh, this is going to throw a monkey wrench into the passing game." But you know what? I'm going to say, bring it on, right? And this might be exactly what the USC offensive line needs to play a better game to answer the challenge. The USC offensive line has been uneven. It's been spotty. But while the level of play from this USC offensive line hasn't been especially strong in recent weeks, let's also acknowledge Lincoln Riley is not putting this offensive line in the best possible position to succeed. I alluded to it earlier that, if teams are having 7-8 guys back playing center field, you have a light tackle box, you need to run the ball. And Lincoln Riley was not quick to do that against Arizona. Took him a while to do that. Once he did, then the passing game began to open up a little bit, and USC was able to find a few plays. The passing game was never really consistent, but a few more plays opened up after USC ran the ball. You bring the linebackers up into the tackle box. So when we talk about Lincoln Riley needing to put this offensive line in a position to succeed, instead of coming into a game with the big picture idea of, well, we're going to throw against this defense or we're going to run against this defense. No, that shouldn't be Lincoln Riley's overall focus. It shouldn't be the 40,000-foot view. It should be what's right in front of his nose. Tackle box is stuffed, you throw. Tackle box is light, they're playing people back, you run. Like, it needs to be that simple. And with these conditions, USC might be more inclined, if it's rainy, as the forecast is for South Bend on Saturday, maybe this is what gets USC to lean into mashing some people, leaning on some people, establishing the run first. I mean, that's not usually how Lincoln Riley does it. He usually likes to come out gunning and then run later, mixing it in. But maybe the weather conditions will give Riley reason to lean on the running game as a first point of attack and then set things up for the downfield passing game with Caleb Williams. And that could be exactly what USC needs. That could be exactly the thing to light a fire under some fannies and get that offensive line to really, embrace the opportunity of being able to play ball again, being able to play at an elite level, because we have not seen this offensive line play at an elite level in recent weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you have thoroughbreds like and speed guys like USC has, we do have the speed advantage. We do have the better receivers, bar none. We got. I still say we obviously. I know there's a lot of Hartman fans there. We still have the best quarterback. We definitely have the better offensive coordinator. Mudding it down, making it messy, absolutely plays in the hands of Notre Dame, in my opinion. They got a big bruiser running back. Their offensive line looks suspect in pass protection, but they're still big guys, and they're going to run behind that left side with Alt. I'm not excited about getting to that team is a mutter, right? Not a thoroughbred's going to win you flat out, but they could just somehow plod through and get a win. Notre Dame loves making it ugly, making it dirty. They love making it messy. So I think this does not play in the hands of USC. USC is, by the way, we're not a finesse team. If you watch our quarterback, he doesn't finesse. He slams safeties into the end zone. We have our own thumpers too. So, I mean, it's tough. I watch our running backs with Austin Jones. He's not going to bat. He can battle through tackles. And Marshawn Lloyd has shown that he's a tough tackle as well. And then, they can go even deeper. So I think that it's going to be an issue of, can USC, I'm hoping LV's right, because LV's saying that the rain's going to break. Now we could play in a little bit of mud. That's fine. Both teams slip. You know what I mean? I'd rather have us playing with a clean ball and not playing in the rain, because it's obviously going to limit our passing game. And they don't, that's our strength. They're strong on strong. Yes, they have Hartman, but again, questions about play calling, questions on the outside receiving. Those questions aren't there for USC. So we definitely want a passing game. In the passing game, you want a clean field.
I would agree with that. Like, if you were to ask me, do you want a clean game or a rainy game? Obviously, like cleaner, calmer conditions would play into USC's hands. But I said what I said in part because USC needs to stop playing mental defense. Instead of worrying what could be taken away, worrying that, we could lose this game we could lose our opportunity. We're thinking about what you're going to lose or what you could lose. You need to flip that around and say, here's an opportunity for us to win a big game. Here's a chance for us to grow as a unit. Here's a chance for us to build confidence and belief. Like Lincoln Riley needs to be more conscious of building positivity into this team, because I'm not really seeing it on the field. I'm not seeing it in terms of the way this team goes about its business. And just for Alex Grinch for a brief moment, I mean, I don't know what exactly he's talking to his players, but whatever it is, it's not getting through. There has to be a way for Grinch to talk to his players in a way that's been different from before. Like, there has to be a different tone, a different point of emphasis in terms of what the coaches are saying to players, because the way they're going about their business up to this point, it's not resonating. There needs to be a different mindset from the coaches filtering down to the players for this game. So in that sense, maybe the adverse conditions gives Riley and Grinch an opening, a way to talk to these players about, hey, they think we're soft, rain, cold, night game. They think we're going to be a bunch of pansies and that Notre Dame's just going to roll right over us. Like, that's a motivational angle that this USC staff has an opportunity to do something with. And maybe that unlocks a new attitude and a new dimension in this team, which, does need to appear. Like, the way things have been going, business as usual, not going to cut it. Like, this team does need to grow up, and maybe adverse conditions in South Bend, while not what we would naturally prefer, Tim, totally agree with you there. Maybe that's like the spark plug that, and you didn't really want it, but maybe it's not what you want, but it's maybe what this team needs to really, take on a much better winning championship level identity at USC.
And the thing we got to remember is a lot of people like to call the USC Trojans the surfer boys from blonde hair with blue eyes. You got to realize that, Caleb played in the DMV. So he's not, I like this comment, rain will not affect Caleb's velocity on his throws. It probably won't. Being in the DMV, he's used to playing in the rain. You got guys like Pregnon who played in cold and wet in Wyoming. So, I mean, it's not like these guys are going to oh no, it's cold and rainy. I don't know I don't believe it's supposed to be cold. I know it's supposed to be wet. I don't know how cold it's supposed to be. Both teams got to play in the rain and the cold. And then they got, you guys got, you Irish, you have some, you got some players that from Southern California, so they're gonna have to deal with it as well. So I think it'd be great. I hate all games that are played in inclement weather, because quite frankly, it detracts from. It's not football weather. It's crap weather. It's crap for the fans. It's crap for the game. The BS the Midwest always throws around like, oh, this is real weather. Yeah, it's real weather for you sitting in the house and having a cocoa, not to go play football, because it gets messy, it gets muddy, it gets stupid. And sometimes you see a team that's maybe, I don't know, a little less athletic, a little slower, actually get the edge. And that's what I'm kind of worried about.
I personally would be concerned with Notre Dame. I think that USC is a better team, but not substantially better. I think they're better. I think they're a top 10 team, and maybe Notre Dame's a top 15 team. Like, I think there's not a whole lot of separation when you add it all up. Now, is USC more capable of blowing out Notre Dame than Notre Dame would be of winning it with a big margin against USC? I believe so. That's been Notre Dame's big issue, in my eyes, has been twofold. Number one, the outside playmaking threats are non-existent. They don't exist. They're not there. They don't threaten a defense vertically. And then number two, their offensive line isn't what it typically is. It's just not nearly as good as its Notre Dame standard. I believe that the defense has played relatively well, and I've watched these games against the last three opponents. I think the defense is really good, and Hartman's fine. He presses late in games as any quarterback would, trying to erase a deficit. Brett Favre went through 6 interceptions and a playoff loss and was questioned about it afterwards. He's like, I'm trying to win the game, not protect my numbers. So when it's desperation time, you heave the ball downfield. But I think Notre Dame's still a really good football team, just a flawed and limited football team.
You would naturally make your first inclination to say USC's better, because USC has Caleb Williams, and Notre Dame has not been able to do much with Sam Hartman, not being able to score. So, like, just on paper, you would naturally be inclined to give the clear edge to USC. But we've seen plenty of times over the years Notre Dame rallying around the flag at home, whether as a national title contender or in cases like this where Notre Dame's a wounded dog, coming off a bad loss, smarting, but like this is the get right game. This is the play like a champion today game. This is the play with pride game. And, as a college football historian, Mark, you remember this quote from the great Beano Cook. There are two teams you never bet against at home, the Russian Army and Notre Dame. And so, plays into, Notre Dame could be 2-3, 4-4, whatever, but it's USC week coming into South Bend. Like if you're USC, you can't take this game for granted one bit. And this is the other thing that we've been talking about, kind of a recurring theme. Like Notre Dame should throw its best punch at USC, but USC needs to just transcend, and USC needs to get into this mindset of we're not worried about whether our opponent throws the best punch. If we play our best football, if we play up to our capabilities, if we play the way we're coached, the way we're taught to play, we're going to be better. And USC has not really reached that standard the last 3 weeks. I mean, against Stanford, sure, but Stanford's terrible. This is the time for USC to just plant its flag, play a good game against, not a great team. No one would say Notre Dame's great, but Notre Dame's a decent team. And at night, primetime, Saturday, NBC, Notre Dame's probably going to play a little bit above its pay grade. And USC just needs to plant the flag and establish the standard that everyone expects, the standard that we have not really seen in a meaningful occasion, in an appreciably big game this season. And, maybe just the realization of, in August, looking at this schedule, every USC player knew it. Like the first half of the season didn't look all that imposing. Like there's no game you circle on your calendar. I mean, the Colorado game kind of acquired some media buzz and some interest because of what happened with Dion. But like in August, no one was saying, oh, that Colorado game, that's a centerpiece game. But everyone knew before the season, Notre Dame, October 14th, that was when everyone had to really kick it up a notch and be ready to be at their best. And so maybe this team has just been mentally coasting, drifting. I'm not saying that's acceptable. I'm not saying that's the way you should play. I'm not saying that's the way you should be coached. But maybe human nature being what it is, this team's just kind of been, in second gear, and maybe this is the game it goes to first gear. I mean, I hope that's how it happens, but I'm going to say you can't just flip the switch. And that's what has me so concerned. Like, thought the defense would show up in the first quarter, with Bryson Shaw defending Alex Grinch heading into the Arizona game. Didn't happen. So I'm not going to say that I'm optimistic. All right. But if you can still make an argument, maybe this is the time this USC team takes on a different mentality, and it will need to if it's going to beat Notre Dame on the road.
What I can't quite figure out, and I don't think anyone can answer this for sure, is that from a scheduling standpoint, that takes its toll on teams emotionally, mentally, physically. These two teams are coming at this game from completely opposite ends of the spectrum. Notre Dame had a titanic matchup against Ohio State a few weeks ago, and they gave it their best shot, threw haymakers, did everything they could, and were exasperated at the end of that game and just had their hearts ripped out of their chests on the final play of the game. Then they go to Duke, and we can dismiss Duke as not a brand name, not a big game, but Saturday night, Fowler and Herbstreit there, ABC there. It was a big game. They were only a 5-point favorite, and they had to pull that game out on a 4th and 16 play on the final drive. And then they go to Louisville. And again, I don't know what's in the locker room, what's going on in regards to how lightly or how seriously they're taking Louisville, but they obviously should have because they were trampled in the second half. After it being a very hotly contested game, Louisville was the team that was on its game late, and Notre Dame's coaching staff not on its game. And maybe the team was gassed after playing 3 marquee primetime type games. I don't want to lift them to the standard of a Notre Dame USC game. They're not. When I say marquee, I mean just what was on the line. Louisville's still an undefeated football team. So was Duke, and they were on prime time in front of everyone. So they have to get up a fourth consecutive time. So just a small slice of me says, well, Notre Dame's battle tested and USC's not. That's an advantage. Most of me says, well, USC, as you pointed out earlier, Matt, has this reserve of energy and focus and everything that's ready to be jettisoned in the direction of Notre Dame, versus Notre Dame, now a fourth consecutive difficult game and tough opponent, and having to get back up for this. They're really going to need that crowd to lift them up.
It's a very interesting line of analysis. Hey, Mark, I know that you count on myself and Tim to kind of carry the conversation because you had a full day of shows at the Voice of College Football, but I do have to ask you a question and make you work a little bit here. And that 2.5 quarters, boy, very underwhelming from Ohio State. How much does that make you rethink that Ohio State Notre Dame game in terms of what you saw in that game and how that, by extension, affects your overall perception of the Irish and just how good they are or aren't?
Yeah. So if we didn't know anything about these athletes going into 2023, the programs, the athletes, anything, and we were just taking this season on its own, then I would have a pretty reserved viewpoint on these two teams' capabilities. That I would consider them, they're good football teams, but they're not going to threaten for a national championship. However, I still have a level of trust in Ohio State's talent, much more so than Notre Dame's. And I think Kyle McCord was playing his first road game, difficult environment, all that. I think his level of play is improving markedly each week. Ohio State has an offensive line issue that if they clean that up, the rest of the team is playing pretty well. But to correct an offensive line mid-season, that's a tough chore.
I don't want anyone. It seems like this year people have really been trying to change the script on what this needs to be for USC. USC needs a defense that doesn't lose them games and allows this offense and Lincoln Riley to win the game. And Caleb Williams, again, like you saw in that was supposed to, that run play he had on the 2-point conversion. I don't know if you saw it, Mark. Was supposed to be a pass play. The receiver fell down, so he improvises just like like an Oklahoma drill, and he just jukes that guy and gets the cone, the ball right inside the cone. That's what Caleb brings you, and I don't see anybody on that defense. And Zach Branch, there was a question earlier from a couple of people about Zach Branch. We know nothing about Zach Branch. This is modern football, you guys. There's no leaks anymore. This isn't the Helton era where like more leaks than the Titanic. It's not that anymore. It's like you have a situation where it's big boy football, just like everyone else across the country. No one releases anything, and you're stupid if you do because you're giving your opponent, an advantage. So short story and Branch is nobody knows what his story is. USC football is going to outscore most of the teams they play. The defense has to not lose the game, period.
Alex Grinch, Jared Parker, two of the, if they aren't the worst coordinators in the country, there are certainly two coordinators that are both on the hot seat. There are two coordinators that are both not doing a good job with the material they have. And I think we need to ask ourselves at USC, and Notre Dame folks can have their own conversation about Jared Parker, but like Jared Parker is squandering Sam Hartman. We can say that much. Like Sam Hartman, like this was supposed to be an upgrade for the Notre Dame team, offense, passing game, and we're not getting it. And Parker just seems out to lunch in terms of schemes and what he's able to unlock with the passing game, with the route trees, the route combinations. If Alex Grinch cannot do at least a decent like B- level job against Jared Parker and Notre Dame, like wouldn't that be the ultimate final indicator that he is just not cut out for this? So I mean, it's an amazing plot point when you consider like these are two of the most embattled coordinators in the whole FBS going up against each other. It's the opposite of a heavyweight battle. As Mark said, it's the resistible force against the movable object. It's exactly the opposite of this clash of titans. And so for either one of these coordinators, like if they can't beat the other guy who's struggling and having a bad year, Tarmac City, baby. I mean, I really think that the unique aspect of this game lends itself to that kind of action from either side. Whoever, if one side really face plants, whether it's the USC defense or the Notre Dame offense, it would merit that kind of response. I'm not joking. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic or just get clicks, because it's, these are two coordinators that are both viewed in very low esteem right now. And they're both desperate for a big performance. They both need to show that they can, rise to at least a moderate standard of competence. So if either one fails badly in this head-to-head, whether it's Alex Grinch or Jared Parker, to me, that would come across as a decisive moment. And I don't think that's overstating things. Now, with Notre Dame, you do have the reality that you're already out of the playoff. So like you're not playing for huge prizes because you don't have a conference championship game to pursue. So maybe if you're Notre Dame, you don't have the same level of urgency. But for USC, like if you lose this game, now it would be a crusher for the playoff, but it's not a conference game. So like the Pac-12 championship game and winning the conference title, that would still be very much in play. And so if Alex Grinch face plants against a struggling offense and a struggling offensive coordinator for Notre Dame, you either bring in Greg Brown from his defensive analyst chair to take over the defense, or you try and figure out another plan. But I really do think that this is a game in which Alex Grinch should be coaching for his job. And some people might say, well, that's hot take city. You're taking it way too far. That might be true. And by the way, like, I don't think Lincoln Riley's going to make this kind of move. So I'm not predicting it will happen. But I think if USC really takes itself seriously as a championship level football program, and Alex Grinch just completely slips on a banana peel against a not very good offensive coordinator, Jared Parker, gonzo. That's my opinion.
Notre Dame is 17th in the nation in yards per play. And I'm not saying that is...
Tennessee State had a lot to do with that.
I understand. I understand that, but everybody has their Tennessee States on the schedule. And Notre Dame has played three really good teams the last, I would say Ohio State probably has a top 15 defense in the country. And Duke and Louisville are probably more in that 35 to 40 range. So, yeah, and they played a MAC school before that. Before that stretch, they played Navy, Tennessee State, and a MAC school, whoever it was, Central Michigan.
Was that yards per play, Mark?
Yes.
Because I'm looking at what I'm looking at is the net, right? Is the points per play margin between the two, and they're like the 20th in the country.
Yeah, 6.98 yards per play on offense. Washington's number 1, USC's 2, Oregon 3.
And like the jump is like well over a yard, I would think, correct?
Oh,
per play.
Well, Washington's at 8.8. USC's at 8.4, and Oregon's at 8, practically 8 flat, and Notre Dame's just a shade under 7.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a huge leap between the top 5 echelon, and then you get. I'm not saying they're crap, but also like we talked about. I mean, you guys are telling me these ACC, I think Louisville played a great game, and we're talking about these defenses. But I think you need to keep it. There's a lot of people that are still already downplaying the Pac-12 and Pac-12 football, and I mean. Well, I'm not ready to anoint the ACC as world beaters either yet.
I'm not downplaying Pac-12 football. I just ranked it as the best conference in America a couple of weeks ago. I'm not downplaying Pac-12 football, but I'm downplaying some of the schedules because the schedule hasn't been played out yet in the Pac-12. Only 2 or 3 out of 9 league games have been played. So I'm not downplaying the Pac-12. I'm playing up Notre Dame's schedule versus a lot of other teams across the country because they've played Ohio State, Duke, NC State, Louisville. They've played a decent schedule. And while that doesn't sound like a great schedule, compare that to most teams' schedules.
Yeah. No, that is a good schedule. I'm not saying it's bottom of the barrel, but at the same time, though, The Ohio State I give you, but I'm not ready to anoint. Louisville has a great start to the season, and Austin and I were celebrating it yesterday. They got some playmakers, but I'm not sold on them being anything super special in football. You know, everyone was talking about last night. Ooh, Louisville. It's like, yeah, Louisville had a good
That's
game.
not what I'm trying to sell, but I'm selling the 17th rated offense in yards per play against good competition.
What does USC do well, Matt? Mark, we pass. We're a pass rushing team. We pressure quarterbacks. What are they having trouble? What did we see in that last game? They couldn't protect Hartman for anything, and that's a bad recipe. So that means they have to rely on the run game. If you rely on the run game, you become one dimensional, and that's when things go sideways. I don't know. I think it's gonna be a great game. It's Notre Dame. It's in South Bend. This is gonna be muddy. It's gonna be a nasty game, and I hope it's a great game.
I'll tell you the other number I was surprised to see, and this is not factual. This is a projection, but Vegas has placed Notre Dame as a 2.5-point favorite. I would have guessed that USC would have been about a 4-point favorite. That would have been my guess.
Yeah.
Historically, South Bend, USC does not win in South Bend. Go back forever. Some of the better USC teams, they go to South Bend and they lose.
I'm trying to keep my optimism up, but I'd be lying to you if I said that I didn't have some concerns or maybe even some doubts, because we know how good this USC offense is. Returning Heisman Trophy winner and Caleb Williams. I mean, he tore us apart last year at the Coliseum. And I'd like to think that's the one good thing that we have going for us right now is it's in South Bend. And another factor from what I'm hearing is the weather's supposed to be pretty sloppy, which USC I know is not used to a ton.
Yeah, I have heard those factors as well. And like you, believe that they favor Notre Dame, who is a 2.5-point favorite in this game. The last I checked,
I was shocked by that, to be honest with you.
I was a little surprised. I was going to go more in the 4 to 4.5 point range on the USC side. We do a USC show on Monday night, and this is just the latest in the confirmation of fan bases are completely biased, and that's all there is to it. And that's not a bad thing. That's just the way it is. But most people try to defend their bias. Because if you talk to USC people, both the media folks that we have on and then also look at the chat, they look at USC as, despite their stumbling and bumbling around against inferior competition, as one of the most talented and potentially one of the best teams in the country. And they look at Notre Dame as this kind of bumbling group of mediocrity because of what's transpired the last 3 weeks. I certainly don't look at it that way. I think there's not much separation. I think people tend to get wowed by the speed on the outside and the scoring ability, and don't take into account always the defensive aspect. And here's my quick synopsis of Notre Dame, since I have watched them the last 3 weeks pretty much every play, is that the offensive line isn't a vintage Notre Dame line. It's not at the level of Notre Dame football. And there are decent wide receivers, but they aren't great playmaking wide receivers. I think the two backs are exceptional. I think the quarterback's really good, as advertised, and the tight end Mitchell Evans is excellent.
Yes.
That would be my synopsis on the offense.
Well, that what you said last there, that's true. Notre Dame is continuing to show that they are tight end you. It looks like we have another good one in Mitchell Evans.
You would get some arguments there, but we'll continue there.
Well, I'm just saying. Well, it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. I'm not saying he's the next Michael Mayer. I'm just saying there's potential to be that. But that's to be determined. I'll be fair on that. But no, you're absolutely right. I as much as I love my team and I'm always going to back them, it is what it is. What you see on the field, you can't make excuses for. I mean, yeah, the offensive line is kind of what they've been like the past couple of years, and just seeing Joe Alt and Blake Fisher getting pushed around by the likes of Louisville and even against Duke, that's troubling, because these are two guys in particular that are supposed to be top one. I think both might be. I know Joe Alt is. He's projected to be a first round pick. Blake Fisher, I'm not sure. But then you look at the guard spots; they're a mess. They're letting guys get through. So that's really concerning. The receivers. I really was not, put it this way. I was not expecting at this point in the season, like at least for us anywhere, we're over the halfway point. I was not expecting a tight end to be leading the receiving core in yards. So the receivers, it has been a little bit of a disappointment. I mean, I don't exactly know what the problem is. I don't know if it's because they're still kind of raw, or there's just lack of playmaking ability, lack of separation. I don't know. But I mean, the game's not played on paper, but you look at what these guys, you look at their size and whatnot on paper, the stats and all that. It's like you would think we'd have one of the best wide receiving cores in the country, and they'd show that on the field. But so far, we're not really seeing it on a consistent basis. We've seen flashes of it, but just not consistently. So it's kind of hard to argue that. And then on the defensive side of things, missed tackles, that's been the story all year, and lack of discipline. So it's just the story's been a case of inconsistency and lack of discipline.
So my contention, for the record, Sean, on the tight end would not be that Mitchell Evans could one day be as good as Michael Mayer. It's the tight end classification, but I guess that's a conversation for another day.
Well, I'm just saying we've had some good ones come out.
Well, of course. Yes, absolutely. The defense, for as good as I think this defense is, like, I tend to think there's really nothing wrong with this defense. Look how they played against Ohio State for the majority of the game.
Yes.
Look how they played against Duke. And really, this game against Louisville only came unraveled. And I think it was really unfortunate. If I recall, Notre Dame was down 17-13. It might have been early fourth quarter.
Yes.
And there was some kind of phantom personal foul, something on the sideline that I really couldn't pick up.
What happened is our linebacker, Maris Leafau, and I did see this. He was called for a face mask. And what was ridiculous about it is the play was already downfield. We already had the stop, and that play alone kept the drive alive for the Cardinals. And he did. I can't BS my way around this. Leafau did have his hand on the guy's face mask, so it was the correct call. But that killed a lot of things right there.
Louisville scored right after that to open up a 2-score game and never looked back. After that, Jawar Jordan had a big night rushing the football, and I guess the conclusion is that the yardage is unacceptable against this level of defense, but I don't know that they didn't get worn down later in the game because of being on the field too long, and for a third consecutive game against that level of an opponent. So what's your assessment of where this defense is compared to where you thought it would be?
Well, you bring up a good point, and I didn't really think about that too much. Yeah, when your offense isn't helping you out that much, you're going to get tired on defense. So I got to give them some slack there, because you're right. When you look back all the way back to the Ohio State game, our defense has kept us in it. I mean, my biggest concern, though, is just the missed tackles are still happening. That because that could easily, we could have had some plays go big if it the missed tackles could have really cost us. Put it that way, because I'm trying to think about all of this in my mind, and it's driving me crazy. But I will say the defensive backfield has been great. The coverage has been great. I guess that's really my only beef is the missed tackles, but it's kind of hard to say that they're a crap defense when they have been keeping us in games.
We were having a conversation on a couple different shows. One was the USC show on Monday night, and I noted that Notre Dame, to my surprise, and again, I watched the Navy game. That seems like it was 6 months ago. Yeah. And then these last 3 competitive games after the 2 layups. And Notre Dame is 17th in the nation in yards per play on offense. I think that would surprise people. That surprised the folks I presented that to. And then, of course, there's always the question, okay, who have they played? Well, who have they played? I think they've played one of the toughest schedules in the country. Who else has played 4 quality opponents, one of which might be elite, remains to be seen, but typically is. And then the other 3 in Duke, Louisville, and NC State are good teams.
Well, I said on our show, I said before the season even started, you look at a lot of these opponents on our schedule, and you think, okay, there's not a lot of these guys that are, national championship contenders. I mean, of course, we know Ohio State, USC, Clemson, they've been in the national title hunt for the last 15 years now on a regular, consistent basis. But you look at a team like a Duke or a Louisville or an NC State. Well, a lot of the times they're not even in the hunt for their own conference championship. I mean, we know they have a history before being good, but some of these teams have slacked off a little bit, which does happen with programs. But people forget that just because a team is not ranked in the top 25 doesn't mean that they're not good. And in particular with Duke, for example, okay, yes, we all know they're primarily known for their basketball program, not so much football, but obviously football is coming alive a little bit out there. And basically our schedule, even though it's not a ranked opponent every week, it's trap game central. Okay, and I'm not trying to sound like an arrogant, typical Notre Dame fan here, but it is one of the most well-known brands. And with that being said, you have a target on your back. Everybody is going to give you their absolute best because they want to beat you. So, yeah, it's not going to be easy. A lot of these teams that you wouldn't think would be a trap game, they step it up. And we've been seeing it these past 4 weeks.
Because of the lack of a conference championship and everything headed toward the college football playoff, and that being the major incentive, what then happens when that's taken away, and it largely is at this point?
You're right. 2 losses, playoff chances are done. I mean, there's no getting around that. I mean, I could make every argument in the book of how, if we went out, this could happen or that could happen. No, just playoff chances are done. But I got a little fiery in Ben and I's preview for this game on our show, and I just and I seriously doubt anybody on the coaches or the players on Notre Dame is going to listen to what I have to say. But I've been surprised before. I found out Golden Tate watched some of my stuff back in the day.
Nice.
But what it comes down to is this. All right, we're 5-2. We have 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 5 games left. We got 2 big opponents on that schedule. Of course, the biggest ones being this week against USC, and then later on against Clemson. Now, Clemson, I get it. They're down a little bit. They're down, but we got to go play them in Death Valley, which is going to be a huge challenge in itself. And then let's see, I think Pittsburgh, Wake Forest, and then we finish out the year against Stanford. So what I say is this. This is what the incentive should be. It sucks that the playoffs are out, but do you want to just lay down, call it quits? Or do you want to try to win 10 games and get yourself to an NY6 bowl game? Now, I know it sucks that national championship's not going to happen, but you can still play in a major bowl game. And as any of us Notre Dame fans know, we haven't won one since the 94 Cotton Bowl. All right. I was 8 years old. It's been a long time. It's time to remedy that and change it. Let's get, obviously I think our only 3 options are the Fiesta Peach. Orange might be a little tricky. But anyway, because correct me if I'm wrong, but the rose and the sugar are the semis this year, correct?
I don't even know. One of the reasons I don't know is because I think it's. I will clean up my attacks here a little bit. I don't think it's real bright or smart to label playoff games as bowl games. To me, they cease to be bowl games when they're playoff games. It's just a playoff game. I don't care where it is that you're going to call it the Rose Bowl. It's like the Rose Bowl game that you played against Alabama in 2020. Okay, it's the Rose Bowl, but it's a playoff and it's in Dallas.
Let's remedy that. That should be our goal right now. Win a major bowl game and break that streak and get, a respectful bowl game plaque in the trophy room. Because I think that would be a great start for this program. If we can't win a national championship, go for the next best thing.
I'm not suggesting that this should be a mindset at this point, but at what point do you start to question Marcus Freeman being the right guy for the job?
My opinion has always been every head coach deserves at least 3 years. I mean, and I know everybody forms their own destiny. This was a trend there for a while in Notre Dame's history, but it seemed like every coach was winning a national championship in their third season. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen with Marcus Freeman, but I feel that every head coach deserves 3 full seasons, and by the start of that 4th season, or even during the 3rd season, if we're not seeing any improvement, like true improvement, then you got to put him on the hot seat.
Got Sean Moriarty here from the two Irish brothers. You can catch their work, both Sean and Ben, right here on YouTube. And Sean and Ben get together to provide Notre Dame post-game right here at the Voice of College Football. So we appreciate that. And of course, regardless of the records, and I'm a sucker for tradition and a purist at heart, Notre Dame USC always means something to me. It's the greatest cross-sectional rivalry in college football, bar none, not even close or debatable in my book. All right, Sean, where does USC rank in your hatred scale?
Well, I know there's been a lot of opponents that were rivals that we don't play on a regular basis anymore. Like, I know we played Purdue in 2021, but we haven't, like, obviously we used to play Michigan all the time, Purdue all the time, Michigan State all the time. USC, of course, is a yearly thing. And then, of course, you got Navy. Boston College, I think that's kind of faded away a little bit. I would say, and you might think I'm crazy for saying this, I would say USC would be my 3rd hated team. Because and believe it or not, for other reasons that I'm not going to get into here, and it's kind of a long story anyway, Michigan State is my most hated team. Michigan probably number 2, and I say Michigan's number 2 because I have met a lot of cool Michigan fans that are good people, and we just, they're not, nasty or anything like that. Same with USC, they're number 3. So yeah, I got to be honest, that's where I have them.
Okay,
most people would probably think I'm crazy, but
well, there is no right or wrong answer. I was just curious because there are, of course, a number of rivalries on Notre Dame's list, many of which you just outlined are on standby at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think, even though it's not a rivalry, that Ohio State might be on some Notre Dame fans' lists.
I just still can't believe that Notre Dame and Ohio State have only played, including a few weeks ago, only 7 times in the entire history of college football.
Yes.
Indiana and Ohio are right next door to one another. How do you only play 7 times?
8 to be a stickler about the exact numbers, but there we go. Yeah.
Okay. I thought there was a bowl game I was missing.
Yeah, 2 Fiestas and then 2 home and homes.
That's right. Okay, I was off by a game. Forgive me.
That's why I tried to gently correct you on that one. But very good.
8 times in however long they've been playing college football, since like the 1870s or something like that. Yeah, 150 years. How do you only play 8 times?
I would agree. I think college football scheduling needs a lot of work, but that's another topic for another time. Sean Moriarty, the two Irish brothers. Again, it's our post-game hosts right here at the Voice of College Football for Notre Dame football, and check out their regular work there on the channel. Sean, we appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you, Mark. And I will actually be at Notre Dame USC this week, and definitely it sounds like I'm going to have to bring out the ponchos for sure. It's gonna be a wet one.